Okay, well, let us get started. We've reached the jackpot of 100 live viewers, which is nice. And welcome and thank you for everyone who has joined us today, this morning or this afternoon if you're in Australia. So yeah, let's introduce ourselves, and I'll introduce the topic in a minute, but you can probably tell where we're coming from the title of the webinar. So I'm Dan White from Marketing Illustrated. I'm an ex-head of expertise at Kantar, and for the last 6 years I've been writing, drawing, doing consultancy, keynotes and training. And my background is in, I guess you'd say, advertising brand research initially. And Juri, do you want to introduce yourself?
Yeah, and before I start, Dan is too shy to tell you that his new book is coming up. I think it's called The Marketing Illustration Inspiration Book.
Marketing Inspiration Book. No, I'm not too shy. Actually, I did in the end put a picture of it at the end of the book. So we'll mention it then. Yeah.
Within Babio, we have all Dan's previous books, and he's really a great visual storyteller. So it's really easy to understand the marketing concepts with this illustration. So we're definitely pre-ordering his new book. You should too, because my understanding of the book industry is that pre-orders are much more important than the orders after. Yeah,
pretty much.
And about me, I'm the CEO and co-founder of Behavio. And we're basically trying to build the most actionable marketing research that tells you what to fix, not just what's broken. Hope you'll see it during this webinar as well. So that's it.
Okay, well, let's get cracking. So the agenda for today, the topics, essentially we're going to be exploring the question of whether TV is suited to big brands, as a lot of people think, or in fact, better suited or particularly well suited to small brands. Juri will be sharing with you 3 or 4 case studies of brands, small brands that have used TV incredibly effectively, which show why it worked for them. And then we'll be addressing some of the challenges or prejudices that people often have with TV advertising, which is that it's just too expensive for small brands, or it's only for older audiences, or that it's simply too risky because you put all your eggs into one basket and there's less opportunity, you know, to test and optimize on the fly, as with other media. And once we've talked about all that, we'll have a Q&A, and also we'll summarize with a TV playbook for small brands.
And you can also type in the questions during in the chat if something is not clear. So feel free to put your questions in chat.
Perfect. We do have sources on the slides, of course, but I just wanted to give a quick mention to the people whose work we've drawn on for this webinar, including D2D, the expert modelers who've worked with ThinkBox on a couple of analyses that we've brought in. There's, of course, Lumen and Amplified Intelligence in the area of attention. We've got data from them. The concept of activation and brand building from Binet and Field. And also Tom Roach's work with Dr. Grace Kite on, I think they call it the ramp and bump, or the performance plateau that small brands see. We love System One's recent work on the role of TV, and of course, Aaron Bergbass's findings about distinctive brand assets and category entry points. So thanks to everyone. Okay, so the background to this whole webinar really is, well, Juri and I had this conversation really about 6 months ago, I guess it was now, about how the industry sees TV these days. And it is seen, we believe, as being treated as being only really for big brands, the exclusive domain of big established, well-off brands. And that is simply too expensive for small brands, or that it only reaches older audiences, not younger audiences, and that it's impossible to measure, and therefore is a sort of a historic kind of channel. And we wanted to challenge that because we are increasingly finding that small brands need a platform like TV to get the brand off the ground. And when I say the brand, I mean kind of building the brand in consumers' brains, consumers' minds, so that it can leverage that brand equity and be more successful as it grows to being a mid-sized and eventually big brand. Okay, so let's talk about why, in fact, TV is actually suited to small brands. Well, there are 3 kind of main drivers of this, main reasons we're saying that. One is because of how attention works. Two is the scalability of TV compared with other channels, and also the trust that being on TV can give a brand. So this analysis is one of many relating to attention. So this one was from the Advertising Council of Australia, but there's also data from Lumen and Amplified Intelligence and Dentsu, all saying the same thing, which is that there is a strong relationship between the amount of attention people give an ad, so how long they watch it for, and the response you get, both in terms of brand lifts and sales uplifts. I think that's pretty clear that attention is a really important thing. However, when you look at some channels, digital channels, you see that the majority of the exposures on those channels achieve very short attention spans, usually 1 or 2 seconds. So this is that famous slide a lot of you have seen, showing that 85% of digital ad exposures are less than 2.5 seconds. So the vast majority are under 2.5 seconds. Now, it is possible to to register your brand and a simple message in 1 or 2 seconds, but only really if you are an established brand. So here's an experiment. This describes an experiment that Behaviour have done to test this hypothesis and to measure this brand size effect, where they took the same creative and showed these creatives for just 2 seconds. And in one version, they used a small brand, less familiar brand, and in the other version, a highly familiar brand like Bosch in this example. And they found a strong correlation between the size of the brand and the ability to register what the brand was from a 2-second exposure. Very clear correlation between the brand size and the brand recall. And this actually ties in with other research, this time from Amplified Intelligence. You remember this 2.5, I'll go back actually, the 2.5 seconds has been talked of as a kind of rough rule of thumb for a threshold that you need about that kind of length of time or more, ideally. But Amplified Intelligence have found that ads that use established branding devices, so distinctive brand assets, that threshold comes right down. And that ties in with this concept, which is that big brands can be instantly recognized because of the familiarity of the asset, the logo in this case. So that brand size means that bigger brands do better or are fine to use channels that have shorter attention spans, but small brands don't have that luxury. And when you look at the amount of time people spend looking, typically on average, at different channels, it's clear that channels like TV and other platforms that are experienced on the big screen do command much longer amounts of attention. So cinema being at the top of that list, you've got a very captive audience, huge screen, lots of attention, average of 22 seconds, whereas broadcast video on demand and TV, more like 5 or 6 seconds. But look down at the bottom, that's social in feed, for example, less than a second typically. So if you're a small brand, TV is going to help. So moving on to scalability. This is a concept we hear about a lot, and this was brought to light by Tom Roach and Grace Kite when they illustrated that a lot of brands start spending mainly on search and social advertising. So new brands start there, and they do well to start with, but then they keep investing more and more in that channel as they've grown a bit, but they reach a sales plateau. It's hard to get beyond that. And they have illustrated, together with, which is consistent with Binet and Field, the concept that you do better to start investing some of your budget on brand building, so that eventually, or quite soon in fact, you get a roughly 50-50 ratio between advertising designed to do one and advertising designed to do other. So you can get over that plateau. And TV is clearly going to be one of the channels that's best suited to overcoming that plateau, partly because of its high attention level, but also because of its potential for high reach as well. So this, bear in mind, this is sponsored research by ThinkBox, but it's conducted by D2D, where they have found that TV, as you spend more, can help your small brand. This is all based on small brands, by the way, this analysis, can help increase that sales uplift and overcome the plateau.
Can I have a question?
Of course.
Do you know why the other channels went completely plateau at a certain spend, or?
It's almost certainly because as you spend more, what happens in some of these other channels is you end up with very high frequencies, but you don't increase your reach. And we know that beyond a certain point, you get diminishing returns where extra frequencies make almost no difference after a while, especially if those happen in a short space. But
okay, so because of the frequency, basically.
yeah, high frequency, but not extending reach.
Yeah. Okay.
Beyond the reach of that channel. Yeah, good question. Thank you. Yeah, and finally, now this has always been around in advertising, where certain channels are associated with credibility, and brands that use those channels are seen as more trustworthy. And I'd argue that I haven't seen data, but I'm assuming that things have got worse in recent times because of the high level of scams that are happening, particularly on certain social channels. So it could be even more important that for people to take a brand seriously and to spend their hard-earned cash on a brand, seeing it on TV is a very reassuring phenomenon because it is seen as the most trustworthy and regulated channel.
Okay, so let's get concrete. Here are some real brands. Some are clients, some are public case studies that made the leap to the TV, and let's see what happened. So the first case study I chose is Headape, which is an online therapy platform. And after a strong start, their new business revenue flatlined for over a year. You can see it was like 3 years ago. And at the time, they were, I think, somewhere around 3 million euros total revenue. So really a small brand. And their social campaigns weren't cutting through. And I think this is exactly what Dan was referring to as a performance plateau. They were familiar with the concept, so they decided to do something different and to try, even being so small, to do their first TV campaign because they were afraid to do such a big investment compared to their like smaller testable TV campaigns. They did it really thoroughly, so they tested a storyboard with us, which was kind of average, but then they added a dog or something to the real video and made a couple other tweaks, and they basically had a high scoring like TV spot in pre-testing, and they launched off season in Q3 to keep media costs down, and this is what happened. So they basically almost doubled their awareness to 25% of the population. They saw a 50% sales uplift, and they got their investment back in 6 months, but still then they had a high revenue afterwards. So that was one example. There's a even, I think, better one in sales. This is a UK challenger bank that before had grown largely through word of mouth, and again decided to go TV for the first time. And their CMO called the TV results insane because they basically had, prior to that, they were used to 150K monthly signups, and it was their strongest month ever when they started the TV campaign up to 250K. This is rare, frankly, that the sales uplift is even bigger than the awareness uplift, and it happens typically when there is a really big unmet need. People are really pissed off with old banks or something like that. So basically, you just tell a couple of people and they subscribe widely. So this is rare, but it can happen, and depends on the category. And then our client, Jim Beam, which is a big brand in many countries across Europe, but this is a case study of the new market entry to Italy. It's just ongoing. This started in January and decided to really be faster, so to use TV as well. And so they took what already worked. They had a concept of a spot that was successful in other markets, basically just changed the main actor, like an Italian influencer, and took the same, but still protested it, whether it really hits the culture, but the understanding there. And again, I'll protested it locally and started in this time Q1, which is also typically off season, and it's not even finished, but we've already measured the awareness uplift, which is more than doubling. So the sales uplift is not yet known, but I was calling with the client last week, and he said, well, it looks good already. Classic understatement, I would say, because as you can see, within 3 months, they went from number 5 on the market to number 3, which is really rare to see something like that in brand tracking. And we'll get back to this case in detail a little bit, because there's a lot of things that are done really good. So it's a good inspiration. Last example is also active campaign. Tony's Chocolonely. That's a big Dutch brand in the UK. It's like mid awareness brand, but also they haven't had a TV campaign before. In January or something like that, they started their first 360 campaign, and we measured it like a week ago. And you can see, because awareness is already high, it's better to look at consideration, which is even more predictive to sales. And even when the reach was quite limited, you can see the pretty nice lift in consideration. And within the UK population, this is really a lot of new potential chocolate buyers. So it's not just theoretical. As you could see, the performance plateau can be seen exactly as that in reality, and the other effects that basically the brand lift translates into the sales can be seen. And we have some questions. Yeah, maybe because this is maybe for a bigger discussion, we'll keep this for a Q&A, and we can start with that later to get exactly to the methodology and attributions and stuff like that. Okay, perfect. Over to you then. Sorry, you're muted.
Rookie error. Oh dear. Thanks, Jerry. Yeah, I was saying we can now get on to some of the challenges of using TV advertising if you're a small brand. I mean, the first one that comes up, of course, is the expense of actually developing and producing quality video advertising. But there are a few things to bear in mind around this. I mean, the first is, I don't know, many of you may have seen this slide, this alarming slide, really, for people in the creative creative agency world, showing how the amount that the creative agencies charge to develop advertising has come down dramatically over the last few decades, and it's continuing to fall. So the cost to create, there are lots of drivers for this, but it does mean you have access to people who can help you produce these things for less money than in the past. And I suppose a bigger phenomenon that might affect production costs in particular even more is the rise of AI, of course. So this is data from the IAB, the Internet Advertising Bureau, showing that over the last 2 to 3 years, the proportion of ads that have used AI either entirely or partially to create video advertising has gone up. It's now, so far this year, it's nearly 40% of ads have used AI to some extent. And Jerry was telling me that there are more and more ads that are being tested by Behaviour are in fact fully AI created, and not just that, but have performed really well, at least as well or better in some cases than others, and that most consumers don't really notice or care that much whether it is or isn't produced by AI, as long as they like it, as long as they like the idea. I know it's a big topic, ethical topic, and a big topic for the advertising industry, but it could be an opportunity for small brands if those costs to produce TV quality video can continue to come down because of AI. So there's always an upside. Okay. Other things to point out. So again, the ThinkBox analysis highlighted that short duration ads work particularly well for smaller brands. So smaller brands using 10-second ads or 20-second ads get the best return on their investment, which makes a lot of sense because small brands need to focus, keep things simple, not communicate too many different messages, and that should well be possible within 10 or 20 seconds. There's also the opportunity, you don't have to buy necessarily in the most expensive months. There are certain months of the year that are cheaper than others. This analysis compares the sales uplifts you typically see from these different months in the year from different categories against the cost of the media that varies. TV costs vary from month to month, and you get some good periods, particularly in Q1 and Q2. We were trying to figure out why December is actually cheap. We thought it would be a more expensive month, but we have some theories as to why that is, but we didn't have time to check our theories before the webinar, but we will actually while I'm going. Cool. So yeah, so think about that as another way of reducing the price, but also don't forget that you are spending more to be on TV, but you're also having a much bigger impact. So like I mentioned earlier, TV and CTV typically get attention durations of about 5 or 6 pounds, sorry, 5 or 6 seconds, but that is higher, much higher than the figures you typically get for social media reels or programmatic display. And in fact, when you look at the prices, although they are higher, the cost per attentive second is pretty similar, actually, and better than programmatic display, for example. By the way, the social media, these costs are very approximate. There's no simple way of because the costs vary a lot depending on what you're doing. So on social media, if you do a completely mass market, it can be lower than £3, but if you do a tightly targeted one, it can go higher. Just so you know that these are just to give a very rough idea. But what's the space for a big Dentsu study that I've been working on for a long time now, very shortly going to be published, that will explore the long-term impact of different channels, and it's got some very interesting results, which we can't wait to share with you. Okay. Finally, there's the question about targetability. It is absolutely true that linear TV is watched by fewer 16 to 34-year-olds than the older generations. But the figure it's still 55% of that cohort watch linear TV, roughly, approximately. Because you've got to remember that there are certain types of programming that are mainly on linear TV that everyone loves watching, particularly live things, live events, live programs, live sports, and reality series, etc., that capture a very broad audience. And of course, although you can't target in the same precise way as some digital channels, you can still target by picking the programs, of course, that younger people or your particular target age group tend to watch, and there's data on that, of course. Okay, so just gives you some ideas. Now we're going to move back to Jiri, who's going to talk about how to de-risk the spend as well.
So we've seen that it's not that much about costs and an audience, but we feel with our clients and ours that the biggest barrier is also, the fear commenting without being able to adjust. So let's have a look at it, because it's really like with digital, you can A/B test, so you can adjust, you feel in control, and TV is like more all in. And the good news is that the two big risks, while the TV can fail to bring back sales, can be almost fully eliminated by pretesting. The first is creative failure. So basically, you have some problem with the creative, being in a weak branding, unclear message, bad emotion, or a strategic failure. If you're targeting a saturated or small niche, the awareness doesn't translate into sales. So let's have a look at the first one. For small brands, it's actually different than for the big ones. There's a lot of talk about like how emotion is really important. It is. I'm not saying that, but when you look at our data, where we compare for small brands how the metric score in different ads for small brands we were testing translates into awareness lifts, you can see that branding is much more important. So if you get branding wrong, no emotion will help because no one knows you. You've seen the data from our experiment that Dan was presenting about no one noticing you within 2 seconds. So it's actually really switched from how TV ads for big brands work, but that's not our today's issue here. The big brands mean typically those who have awareness over 60%. All the others are, in this case, small. So if you're 5% awareness brand or 35, you should still focus primarily on branding. So let's have a look on this Jim Beam ad. It's in Italian, which I think is good because most of us, we don't have anyone from Italy, won't understand a word, but the possible branding. So let's watch it. And Jim Beam in this case in Italy is a really small brand. No one really knows it. So it counts as a small brand there. How can I play it? Maybe I have to go to the slides.
Jim Beam non è solo per chi va in palestra. Magnesio di Jim Beam per combattere la stanchezza. Maca di Jim Beam per concentrazione e focus. Creatina di Jim Beam per avere più forza. E le proteine di Jim Beam per la crescita e il recupero muscolare. Jim Beam per ogni sport.
So I guess for every creative director, it feels overbranded a lot. Yeah, there's a Cardinal logo all the time, small Cardinal logo. Then there is some logo or where people look like 5 times or 6 times, and there's 6 audio mentions of the brand. Yeah, so really super strong branding. Still, even with such a branding, this translates into just 41% of viewers who could actually recall the brand. So that's how hard branding is for small brands. That's why it's so important. And that means that, for example, here I have a Dutch ad for a small Dutch brand, which is like normal average branding. You know, you have a logo at the beginning, at the end, and then you have one audio mention at the end. And you stand no chance. No one remembers it, so there's no brand building really. It translates into 15% recall. So that's the creative. We can talk about emotion as well, but I generally believe it distracts a little bit when you're a small brand, because you should really focus more on clear branding and clear message. And that's getting us to let me maybe just mention that companies think that the predicting of creative is something they don't have time or money for. But really, this is our example, but not just us. You can have within a couple days full pretest with 500 real people, a couple thousand euros. We're starting now AI pretest that works pretty well for branding part actually, and that's like 10 fraction, like 1/10 of the price, and it's in 5 minutes. So I think it's something you just have to do if you invest into TV to check at least the branding, or better emotion if you're having some a bold concept or something, how that's going to be seen. But let's go to the other second big risk, and that is the license strategy. Because when we're saying that TV helps and it translates into sales, it doesn't work for every company. It only works for companies where there is, let's say, a mind space for a new brand that solves some unmet need, basically. Because and then we'll show it in a while from a neuroscience perspective. but it's really, you cannot, as a small brand, really beat the big players if they're already there and people are happy with what they're solving. So you should check for like growth potential in your message. Let's stay with the Mikazu case, which is basically a competitor of Airbnb or Booking in Netherlands. And their main message, the strategy is that they want to be seen as houses perfect for holidays. And this is a large need across the Dutch population, but it's saturated. And you can see it clearly from this table. Basically, the columns are competitors. The red one are the small ones, but there's like 3 big players, or 2 big and 1 big players, and they're already pretty well connected to this message. And as you can see here, it's actually not just a problem of strategy, it's also a lot about category. For Mikazu, it's actually really hard to find a need with large growth potential, because it's pretty much saturated by Booking, Airbnb, and Belvela here. Means that it still do something, but you have to expect like lower results. If you compare this to the Jim Beam in Italy, it's basically, there's not many super big brands. Most of the players are smaller brands, around like maximum 30% of awareness or somewhere like there. So it's like both a large need, a lot of people in Italy want this, but there's also a free mind space, a white space. So again, you can de-risk that, and that pretty much depends on whether you want to grow big, or it's maybe better to stay with small channels, because your niche brand could also be good. But TV is really more for brands that want to scale, and you can kind of measure the potential in your needs and what to expect given your category, your competitors, whether it's worth it. Again, can be quick and affordable, and it's worth the risking. And I love this new dance illustration of what I was just.
This one's brand new, as in yesterday, because I wanted to think of a way of illustrating what Jimmy's been talking about here, about why you need to look for white space, why you need to focus on a need that isn't already dominated and strongly linked already with established rivals. So I'll just take you through these. I'd love your feedback on this, by the way, people, because sometimes I use these and I change my mind about whether they're useful or not, but I think this one's useful. But if you're a young brand, just like Jim Beam, we just saw, focusing on getting your name awareness, establishing your logo is hard enough. That'll take a time. But when it comes to linking with a need, if you pick, for example, in this diagram, need 1, it's going to be a disaster, because need 1 is already linked not only with one established rival, but both of the rivals in this illustration. And similarly, there are other needs, need 2, need 4, need 5, that are already linked. And if you start talking about those needs, what could actually happen is that because they are linked in people's minds with other brands, those other brands will be fired because of the neural links, and not your brand, because your brand is smaller and less well known. And we do see this happening. New brands that try and take on a big big player, a big girl, either way, and in a very particular area, they can actually completely fail. And it's called misattribution. It's real. It's because of the way the brain works. But if you find a need 3 in this example, that isn't owned, and you forge that connection, you've got a good chance of owning it eventually. And then, of course, you can build from there. There's a big debate in the marketing world as to whether, to grow, you should try and be all things to everyone from day one. And that's simply not possible, I believe, from a neuroscience point of view. And also, it's not credible from a trade point of view. So a new brand, once it's established, early on, it needs to establish its name, its logo, and focus on a particular need. it may start to build other things around it, like jingles and symbols as well. Once it has established those connections, it can then potentially create a link with another need. And then once it's done that, and it's become a huge brand, that's when it can start to gain and become all things to everyone, because it becomes the dominant brand in the category that people just is the default that they use for all sorts of purposes and needs, because it's everywhere and highly familiar, etc., etc. It's trying to reconcile the two ideas of why differentiation is still important, particularly for young brands, for small brands, because it's the only way they're going to get a foot in the mental door. I'm mixing up my metaphors now. A foot in the door in the brain. And then, but eventually can become something that is used across multiple category entry points, like we know big brands do eventually have that characteristic as well. I hope that makes sense. But, yeah, any feedback would be appreciated on these particular diagrams. But that's enough about illustrations. Let us now summarize where we've got to before we take some questions. So we've got this sort of TV playbook for small brands. When you think about the perceptions we introduced at the beginning of the webinar, the reality is quite different. Actually, TV does work for the brands, but small brands need TV. They need TV to scale in the brain and to scale to a wider audience. Is it too costly? Well, production and media costs, production costs are coming down, and there are ways to minimize the cost. And Julie just showed some examples of some fairly small campaigns, effectively, that have had a big impact on small brands. Does it reach only older people? No, there's plenty of programming that reaches a young audience, and certainly there are ways to reach people beyond social channels. Is it impossible to measure? It's not as easy to measure in some regards, but there are ways you can de-risk your investments through pre-testing in particular. So the playbook would be, for example, consider using shorter ads, so your 10 seconds, your 15s and 20s. Make sure you've chosen the right need, the right that's within a white space that you've got a chance to dominate. Go crazy with the branding, keep it really, really clear, like Jim Beam, because that's the only way you're going to start to impinge and get that name into people's heads. Yeah, but don't worry too much about high production values. You don't need to spend millions to produce a high quality 10 or 15 second video ad. The important thing is people love the idea, the concept. How it's executed is less critical, and certainly AI might be a good opportunity, or some other low-cost way of filming such a thing. De-risk by using pre-testing to make sure you know you're investing in something that's going to give a good return, and consider ways of buying at cheaper media periods. Okay, so we're now going to move on to our Q&A. I believe, Jerry, we've got some questions.
We already have a lot of questions in the chat. Well, we also copied some of the LinkedIn discussions that happened in the previous days. Maybe let me start with one here before we move to the chat, because I think that's also important to there was already I saw some of you questioning whether the brands we've shown are really small. Some of them were really like a couple of million euros revenue. Mainly small means that you're small in attention. It could be really like you can start at 5. Where we typically see the time to go to TV is when you feel that your digital channels are wearing out. So typically when you start a new category or a new company, there is some group of people that are in the market are looking for it. So it works for you for the conversion. And then it doesn't have to be so flat line as in Happy case, but you kind of see your ROI going down when you scale it and you're hitting you're close to the ceiling. So that's about the time where you should be considering those high reach channels. Doesn't have to be just TV, can be radio, which is cheaper for some cases, can be outdoor, can be cinema, as then mentioned. So this is more like the TV as the prime example of those high attention channels. And you don't have to, that's important, you don't have to aim for sudden reach. It's not that you have to have 50% reach to get some like sales results. So really there's no minimum budget, like in theory, for a TV campaign. It's the minimum is the minimum they are okay with you to screen you. So I was checking, because there was someone asking on a LinkedIn in the UK, the connected TV channels, the campaigns there can start as low as 20,000 pounds, and even in the UK, which is one of the most expensive markets in Europe, like a typical or the smaller TV campaigns are typically even lower than 100,000 pounds, and half of all ads in the UK are less than $250,000. So it's really not, it's not millions. You can really have dozens of thousands euros or pounds, and it can already work. So and now let's go back to the questions.
Yeah, shall I pick one up while you're looking at that, Jiri? This question about, does the same thinking apply to all mass media, like outdoor, radio, etc.? That's a question from Richie. Kind of yes, in the sense that there are channels, particularly like cinema or radio, that can command attention for longer, that gives your new brand a chance to be registered. So again, if you develop some nice, what do you call them, audio assets, like a jingle or something, then radio can be a fantastic way to get a lower cost way of getting off the block. Outdoor, maybe, but on its own, again, you've only got a second or two of exposure in most cases. I think it depends on the type of outdoor. You know, if you're talking about underground posters where the dwell times are longer, even if the reach is not high, that can work. Not necessarily ones that people are, you know, rushing past,
driving around.
Yeah, otherwise you have the same problem, unless you can combine it where you have TV to start and outdoor afterwards, which is the classic old formula, you know, where you've already established the branding assets through video. But again, that doesn't help the price issue. Yeah. What else have we got?
Okay, so let's go back to the first question was Spice Master. How do you get around the attribution issues? The penny counters must be appeased. Well, attribution is, you know, it's always painful. It's painful in digital. It's painful here, like some causal, relationships. But there's basically two ways. The case studies I was showing to you, they're quite easy because, for example, the head-up case, they haven't changed anything else. So basically, it was just a TV campaign that was happening at the time. So there was simply nothing else that could cause the sales uplift. There was no PR changes, stuff. So in those cases, you kind of see it clearly. And just to mention, like, for example, the Jim Beam Italy campaign, it's not just TV. It's typically the same, the concept of supporting your TV campaign with social conversion campaigns. You cannot scale it. There's some certain ceiling, so it's not about do just TV. And in those cases, there's a thing called marketing mix modeling, which is like a big statistical thing where you basically pour in all your sales data, channel data, brand tracking data, and it does the magic, and it can tell you the relative contributions of different channels. But that is mostly for big brands. That's how you can learn it. It's really costly. So the typical attribution, much cheaper that we do, for example, on brand tracking is really you're looking for the relations between the easily measured figures like awareness, consideration, penetration, sales, and stuff. And if they don't add up, you look for reasons. So it's not that always when you build your awareness, you're gonna grow in sales. But if you build an awareness and you don't grow in sales, there is a reason for that. It can be a problem of the distribution, it can be a problem of the product, and we can tell you. So it's like a practical way how to kind of attribute it almost correctly and cheaply.
And there still are ways, not, the old-fashioned version of A/B testing was regional testing. If there's an opportunity to try TV in some regions and not others, and compare. Or again, what smaller brands have done in the past is that they've had their budget, especially if they're advertising waves. Wave 1, you have just social. Wave 2, a few months later, you have TV plus social. Wave 3, you experiment for a while to see which produce the biggest sales uplifts and/or brand uplifts. That's a way of inferring what the mix is doing, what the contribution of TV is beyond what you're doing in the past. So there are things you can do. You just need to think through what am I going to vary so I can test whether it's given me.
Okay, thanks. Then the next question there was, how do you define small brand for Czech market? So this, this playbook, as I said, it applies for small and mid brands. So if you're not having awareness like 60+%, you should still be doing this branding first playbook. And on the smallest part, which is the smallest brand, I think I kind of answered by when it feels that you're not growing sufficiently with your social channel. So you can really have like 2% penetration within your category, and you can already be thinking about going TV. Basically, when you are quite sure that your strategy is right, or you're testing it, and you're looking, and you have some budget, the minimum budget we were talking about in Czech market in the linear TV can be a couple millions of crowns, and that's it. So, but maybe now with the connected TV, we as Behavio, and I saw there's some B2B questions, we're going to that, where we are thinking about, we saw that LinkedIn now is starting offering some connection of the targeting with some connected TV. If that really works, we as a small brand would be considering going to connected TV, because linear TV for B2B is like you have a lot of irrelevant people there, too much. But if we can be part of the Netflix movies of the marketers in brands, yes, we are going to go for that. Then we already had great answers about the December reasons, that it's a lower demand already from advertisers, and also higher supply, more people are watching. So I think
thanks for that.
That's what I thought, and yeah, thanks for that. Then we have Deutsch. Hallo zusammen. This is
I'll translate that.
That is automatic. So yeah.
Is there an automatic translate on this?
I think it's transcribed.
Yes, there is.
No problem. That's someone's AI note taker.
Okay. Great.
So addressable TV allows you to de-risk your TV investment. One can spend a small 4 or 5 figure investment as TV against a smaller audience or area, and then make learnings, refine, and go again.
That's kind of what I was saying. That's a modern equivalent, for addressable TV. Perfect. Thank you for that, Kurt.
Perfect. So now the B2B question, how should we think about this in the context of B2B brands? If
you just sort of kind of covered that, haven't you, Jiri?
Yeah, I think so. Let's look if there's something more. Yes, like really for this whole thinking, and that's been like, it even applies more for B2B, because there's less big brands. There's more white space, because there's few big B2B brands that are really good at, connecting yourself to the nerves, as Dan was showing. So actually, for B2B, this would work even better. The only problem is really that you only want to target category buyers. And if you go linear TV or radio, there's a lot of waste, a lot of people that are really irrelevant. So that's why connected TV opens this like TV brand building for the whole B2B sector, as soon as they can kind of offer the targeting for those roles, for example. So I think they somehow connect LinkedIn data to Netflix. Well, let's go there.
Okay.
This is about your neuron chart.
Yes, I think there's a, let's see if I can paste a link to it here. I'll just put a link to, well, I think it's very similar to what you're saying there, Kevin. Yeah, which it's called the 3Cs, a 3C framework that captures what Jenny Romaniuk has been saying, which is that there are 3 things to consider in terms of which category entry points to choose, which needs to choose. One is, the size of it, the commonality, how commonly does it come up. Then you've got the competitiveness, which Jury talked in particular about. Is it already owned by the brands? And then the third one is credibility or competence. In other words, is it credible for your brand and for your organization to meet that need well? I find that a very useful framework. I just came across that actually just recently.
Then we have a great comment about Poppy. That has done well by going straight in the soft drinks competitive set with sodas back but better, rather than competing in SAPs or occasions. That's correct. While we see that really the occasion or SAP-based approach works really well for big brands where you really want to make it easier to be thought in every occasion. If you're small, it really depends. Where's the largest need that is unattended? It could be an occasion, but often it's not about the occasion. It's more like a benefit. It's a how need, not the when need. So how we do this in behavior is we kind of disregard the type of the need, and we just measure everything, whether it's a product related need or distribution or category entry points. And then you'll see the penetration, what's the percentage of people in a category that really want this or need this, and how the other brands are spontaneously present in this situation. And for some brands, it could be the how need. For some brands, it could be the occasion, the when need. So in Poppy's case, apparently the how need was a better strategy.
I sometimes put need stroke desire stroke occasion stroke to remind us that it doesn't have to be a how functionally. We're talking, there can be different ways of doing this. But something that's relevant but not dominated, that's related to why or when or how people buy something, that can be need.
Our brains are not as systematic as marketing scientists are, so we like to have different labels, but the brain is just wants something.
Just something to become famous for, really.
Okay, that's the same about corn, vegetarians. Question: what are your thoughts on buying very cheap TV, for example, in daytimes, which are still reaching lots of category buyers, but perhaps reach will be capped? I don't know. I have enough about this, Dan, to answer this really.
Just the point is, yes, the reach won't be as high, but still, like the thing you showed earlier. If you're a small brand and you can get to some people you never got to because they've never heard of you, it doesn't matter if the total reach is low. You're still reaching lots of new people, and that's what happens. That's why big brands probably wouldn't find that kind of media so interesting, but small brands can, because they've got a lot of headroom anyway. So don't worry. So long as you're reaching new, in an absolute terms, lots of new people, you're fine.
Okay, we've already answered Richie's question. So. Counterproductive, isn't it counterproductive to buy the cheapest periods because there's a lower demand? And that's what Dan just said, because you basically, as a small brand, you're more flexible because your growth goals are smaller, you have smaller budgets, so there's always enough new people who haven't heard about you in the cheapest periods.
And also those prices are based on all industries, so it could be that there's not, there might not be lower demand for your particular niche. I don't know. So,
And then from Sam, there's a question on our thoughts on automated AI PVC straight from the branding on your website. I don't know which that means, Dan. So would you?
Well, no, I'm guessing it means that you have AI that can look at your brand and how it talks about itself and its distinctive brand assets that are all on the website, if it's a good website, and it will come up with some sort of ad, a generic ad that will capture that. I mean, there may be a role for that. I doubt that's going to. I mean, I think that plus some clever coaching, what do we call it, editing of the script, of the queries and the iterative process, maybe. but I've never looked into doing that or been involved in a project, so I don't have an experience of whether they're any good at all. You never know. Things are moving on so fast. It's possible.
Okay.
I'd love to see one. If anyone's got one or did one, and I can send a link, I'd love to see how they actually come out, whether there's any originality or human connection there or not.
What does the research say about the effects of fully integrating brand into content in TV shows as opposed to advertising?
Okay.
I think there's a couple things that we know from research, maybe not exactly the answer to this, but what I have in mind. First, there's a lot of, it's similar with like the influencers. Sometimes full integrating means not visible, especially if you're a small brand. So people look at the faces when something is in the corner, they don't see it. You see the logo of the big brand in the corner, you don't see a logo of the small brand there. So the devil is in the details. So if you manage to get your content integrated where people look, and the attention is big there, then it's great. And if you can get it cheaply, I think it's better than advertising. But on the other hand, there is not much like evidence that something is bad just because it is in advertising. That's what the agencies that sell influencers like to say, that people hate advertising, but it's not the case. The memory works even when you like hate the commercial breaks. And it's not like building the bad emotion to like if you have on digital, if you have a very frequently repeated ad, there's some evidence that people start hate that brand. But there's no evidence that they hate the brand that's been too much on TV. I don't know why, but it's like that. So yes, it could be good, but you have to.
The product placement on TV shows, from my understanding, is it can be very, very expensive because you've got to involve the director and the editors, and even in some cases the actors. And if it's done badly, it can be so the expense can be high, and it's highly risky because, like you said, if it's integrated really slick in a natural way, people might not even notice it. And if it's done in a forced way, then the director won't like it. And I don't know. I'm sorry, I'm probably expressing a bit of a prejudice here, actually, but be careful. That's all I just said. Be careful about exploring that one, personally.
I realize we've already been talking over an hour, so feel free, because maybe you have other things scheduled. We'll still stay here and answer all the other questions, but we'll be sharing the recording. So if you have to go, thank you so much.
I just remembered my advert, Jerry.
Oh yeah, sure. Yeah. Then
they're all going now. Anyway, if you'd like to pre-order my book, it's on Amazon, the Marketing Inspiration book, and it's 100 famous and not so famous case examples of real marketing excellence, brought with 100 illustrations as well. So please do take a look if you want. And thank you, everyone. Thanks for coming. Thanks for really good set of questions. So
yeah, and back to your questions now for those who can stay. So let's prioritize now those who are raising hand. I can see Susanna and someone else was so, and then we go back to the questions in the chat. So Susanna, please. If that was meant like a raise hand. If not, then Sophie.
Yeah, thanks. Interesting presentation. Of course, a lot of, let's say, general principles apply for small brands as they are for big brands. So that's interesting to see. I was a bit surprised about the finding that 10-second ads actually work better than a 30-second ad. I'm a psychologist, so I look at it at a different angle maybe, but for me, it's about making consumers familiar with the category, the brand positioning, the kind of features. So I would reason that they benefit from a 30-second ad as well, but maybe that's more about...
So you're totally right. This was about the total ROI. So it counted in the price and the effect of the longer attention. So definitely it's better to have a longer ad, like 30-second ad, but it's so much more expensive that overall, if you can like use only 20-second ads, it's so much cheaper that the overall ROI is higher. But you're right. The longer the attention,
Yeah, and a build on that is also with the longer ads, there's more, the variability of how clever the creative is big, the variability is bigger, because I've noticed this, especially recently with even longer ads, like a 40s or 60s, is it's sometimes, what's the word in English? It's bloated, you know. It's got creativity there that isn't serving the brand or the message, but you're still paying for the extra length. Lots of people might switch away because it gets boring. You know, they're more like to look away or pick up their phone. So it doesn't have the impact it should. But yeah.
But are you saying that it's more a challenge to have a good narrative that entertains for 30 seconds, and so for small brands probably that shows that the production is less? Or are you saying actually people don't care about to get to know a new brand that takes 30 seconds explanation?
You probably don't need it yet. Dewey, you were saying that a small brand, it should focus on the basics. You know, get the basics right. What is this brand all about? What's the logo look like? What's it called?
Yeah. Like apparently, if you the story, the narrative is something we remember really well. But frankly, and I love Google has made a big research on this, and they called the two different approaches the traditional story arc, something like that, or effective story arc. And I didn't like it because I would prefer to have ads that have, you know, build up climax, some point,
exactly.
and then you introduce the brand. That's how we used to like, and that used to be like that. That used to be effective 30 years ago, where people were watching the ad. Now they're, you know, scrolling.
Tell you what, I did some research neurologically, and there is still this build-up, like how you can. It's like a camel curve in terms of emotion. So I think our brain doesn't change that much. But I get the point. It's about just tracking attention, and that's a fair point.
And I think most of the people really don't watch the 30 seconds, so it's basically just so what they call effective, and that we can see this when we're persisting ads. Basically, the best ads.
Sorry, carry on. I'm interrupting.
Yeah, they have a emotional peak at the beginning, and then a couple of them, as you call it, camel, and basically you just add some other parts of the story for people who are willing to stay, but you should put your best idea in the first seconds with the strong branding, and for really what people are supposed to remember is what then showed in is basically linking a brand to a new brand asset and to a single product message for small brands, which is like you should have it more like vibe repeated style, as was the case of Jim Beam ads, less than some build-up climax and logo. Those ads work worse, and specifically for small brands, not. They're
and there's an issue of discipline as well, because it's like, do you remember that famous quote? You know, I've written you a long letter because I didn't have much time, or whatever. I can't remember. I think the same is. I saw when I worked in research, quite often you could have a 30-second ad, right? But then you force the creative to say, now, can you produce a 20-second version of your 30-second ad? It would force, and they would actually create something that had 99% of the effectiveness, because they really edited it cleverly. Oh, by the way, speaking of camels, I put a link to what I think you might be referring to for other people. Hopefully that's what you were thinking of there. I love that. And I think the creative world hasn't yet learned how to adapt to the modern media environment where people are switching away from the video.
Okay. So
I think we can continue conversation, but maybe I need to go to another meeting, but let's stay in touch for sure. And
happy to.
There's some other questions from other people.
Thanks for joining us.
Yeah, you're welcome. Thank you.
Do we have another raised hand, or we go back to the questions in the chat? I think I can't see any other. Please re-raise if you want to. So I think where we ended here. So in your opinion, would be the trigger point definition to start the consider TV? What key elements would you assess apart from budget? I think I a little bit answered that by, maybe it's not precise enough, but it's basically, if you grow super fast with search channels, with digital channels, don't change it. It can be at that early stage, it can be still more effective. The ROI would be definitely higher because our TV ROI is typically, 2-3 times. In early stages of digital, it can be 4-6 times. So I think when you're getting lower with that, that's because you're out of the early buyers, early adopters, people in market, and you want to reach out to light buyers and people who are less interested in category. You'll see your ROI going down. That's I think the stage.
The production costs. I mean, the key thing is that not the media cost, but whether or not you've got enough money to create a decent ad, which is why we talked about AI as a potential way to change the equation dramatically.
By the way, that amazing ad that aired in Australia we were showing before, I think that was made by 2 people internally in the team of the company.
Wow, really?
So I think the production cost was there 2 weeks of their time. So could be like that, but,
because beyond that, because you get what you pay for, because you're paying for an expensive media, but you get good reach and you get a high effect that's roughly proportionate to the cost. So you get what you pay for, and probably for small brands that's great because you'll build some assets you can then use later to be more effective. So it's an investment as well.
Then similar question, but going deeper, at what stage or under what conditions should a brand prioritize linear TV versus connected TV?
Oh, linear versus connected. Oh gosh. You know what? I really don't know. in the sense of, it's in the sense that the costs are similar, as I understand them. A bit more
a little bit higher in the connected TV.
Because you can target a bit more sophisticatedly in theory. But the experience from the consumer side is similar because that's the point. It's a big screen,
I would say it also depends on the penetration of the category that you're in, because paying more for connected TV makes more sense when you can target more precisely. We don't mean targeting a specific group. It's about targeting your category buyers. So it's always good to target anyone in a category who is possible to buy. But sometimes your category is very niche, and then connected TV could bring less wasted impressions, let's say, to people for whom it is totally irrelevant. So a little bit dependent on the industry, but I don't think we have a good answer here. In South Africa, it is triggered by market need, emerging brands who are expanding and specifically targeting LSM for 7 to series. Oh, that's not a question. That's a pain. Thank you for that. About that we already discussed with Sophie.
We did that one,
yeah. You reach over 80% by the distribution of your branding category and start with meaning ROI.
Well, maybe, yeah. I mean, I remember that rule of thumb, Martin. I'm just trying to think of, but there's also, it depends on the dynamics of the category and how people come in and out of the category, because sometimes you can build that fame of the brand, in advance of the distribution, as long as you think you're going to get the distribution within the next sort of 6 to 12 months. But yeah. And I think, and that also is related to targeting, isn't it? Like we just talked about.
Cool. Okay, and then we have a lot of thanks. Thank you also for joining. And that's it. What the best? We will share the slides, and on the last slide there's already a Let's Talk link, so that's the best way to get in touch directly with either of us.
Teresa's already answered that one down below. She puts in our links, so that's good.
Oh yeah, also thank you, and yeah, we have someone answering the linear versus connected.
Yeah.
Okay. So thank you so much. We're really happy to, as you might have noticed, we enjoy talking about this topic and thinking together. This is not the knowledge is still evolving. So thank you so much for the questions, for some of the answers that you know better than us. We're really happy to talk, to have a half an hour talk just to consult something with us, go deeper, or anything else. So thanks so much. Thanks so much. You can also give some negative feedback if you have some, what you missed, what you were expecting that we didn't bring. And that's it, Dan.
Great. Thanks, everyone. Good fun. Thank you.